Hello, I'm Peggy Carruthers, Director of Custom Content at QSR Magazine and WTWH Media, and I'd like to welcome you to today's webinar, Can a Digital-First Strategy Improve Speed and Service? In the fast-paced world of quick-service restaurants, brands are leading with a consumer-focused, digital-led approach to both keep up with changing expectations of consumers and to defend against forces facing the industry today. We're going to learn about how a digital-first strategy that focuses on improving human interaction at every touchpoint is driving increased speed, loyalty, engagement, and spending. One quick note before we get started, we will be taking your questions at the end of the program, which you can submit using the webinar functionality on the console. You can ask a question at any point during the webinar, so even though we will be answering them at the end, we encourage you to ask questions as they come to you. And now to begin, Trisha and Luke, please take it away.
Oh, thank you, Peggy. And hello, everybody. I'm Trisha Asgeirsson. I'm delighted to be here today representing Fingermark. And I'm joined by Luke Irving, the founder of Fingermark, our fearless leader who is helping us trailblaze on a mission to solve problems for the quick service restaurant industry globally. And for those of you who have not heard about Fingermark, delighted to share with you who we are. We're a technology company that is focused on the quick service restaurant industry. We're helping the industry go faster by using our world-leading solutions across digital menus, kiosks, machine vision, our AI applications for drive-through, and our real-time data that helps these businesses really enhance their overall insight. We're really proud that we work with many of the world's leading QSR brands globally. We're honored to be partnering and working with them, but also partnering with the world's leading technology and payments companies around the world. So we're truly getting started. In this webinar, we will be covering the current trends and implications for the QSR industry, the evolution of drive-through and balancing speed and accuracy and service. We'll touch on the importance of an omni-channel digital strategy and key focuses for the quick service restaurant industry. And we will really go into a Q&A with Luke to get his perspective. So Luke, over to you. Tell us a little bit about your experience in this QSR space, some of the latest trends, what you're seeing, and the shift towards digital.
Yeah, absolutely. So firstly, I'd like to thank QSR Web for this. Thank you, Trisha, for the great introduction. Thanks, Peggy, for setting this up. We're a technology company, but we're actually pretty adept at trying to call into certain phone lines, which we struggled with last night. But anyway, and of course, the last thing is thank you very much to KFC Canada for housing and giving me a very plush room to a nomad Kiwi who was in desperate need of a room, unless I'd do this in an Uber. So here we are. So yeah, it's been a crazy, I call it crazy 5 years. COVID has obviously had a huge impact on restaurants, on consumer appetite, but really a lot of this stuff was happening prior to COVID. It was just sort of the foothills. It was starting to move. I think, some of the things I want to talk about today is really the customers and the first thing I'll talk about is the customers, and they are demanding more than just one way of ordering. If you think about the traditional QSR restaurant, you had, even pre-kiosks, you maybe had a couple of kiosks, you had front counter, you had drive-through, and you had phone ordering. Remember that? And so there was only sort of 4 or 5 channels into the restaurant. Now the customer doesn't want that. They want convenience. You've got Gen Y, Gen X, you've got the millennials, everyone is mobile. They've got laptops, they've got access to web, and they've also, have this huge demand through aggregators and delivery aggregators as well. So convenience is more so now than it ever has been. So, what used to be 5 channels is now, almost, you could say 15 to 20 channels within a restaurant, which brings in so many more orders per hour than it ever used to. So, there's some massive challenges there, which we can talk about later around, impact on kitchen and middle kitchen as well. The second trend that I see is COVID has really gutted the staffing population. I don't know where they've all gone, but they're certainly they're slowly coming back, but what they've lost is a lot of IP in these restaurants. So a lot of these staff members that had been there for a long time, and don't get me wrong, there's still a lot of them there, but they sort of mass exited. So what you have is a low IP knowledge of how these restaurants work. So naturally, they're going to slow things down. So there's big opportunities there for companies which can tackle that problem. But I think that opens up massive opportunities in different areas, which we can talk a bit more about later. So certainly the staffing. So you've got increase in revenue, and you've got less people to serve. I think the next point that we talk about is the drive-through, which is obviously a little sweet spot for me. Fascinated with it. I call it the most complex stretch of road in the world. It really is. And I think, the natural, through COVID, obviously, the drive-through was kind of the only thing that was open. So it's the only channel that was open aside from delivery. So people got used to it. So they don't really want to get out of their cars anymore. So you've got this bottleneck, which is just huge and, growing in capacity. And then naturally that's going to slow down. But we can also talk more about that later on as well. The other thing is obviously delivery, still going strong, probably not as strong through the lockdowns, but it's still there to stay, and it is going to be here to stay. Optimization, aggregation of those, I see coming pretty rapidly, and they've also got to find a point of difference as well. And also, and it's great talking with some of the technology providers that are really jumping on board that sort of sequencing of orders as they all come into the restaurant. And the final piece is really automation. So kiosks, robotics, it's all now being talked about very, very seriously. This is not a nice to have, this is a must. And I think the certainly, being having kiosks as one of our products, we're seeing an unprecedented demand for these things. But, I just always say it's a no-brainer. It's the safest technology you can invest in at the moment. Because it's got such a good ROI for many reasons. But I think robots are a thing, and we had a great presentation with Miso Robotics. It was a panel around implementation of robotics and so on. So that, the early adopters are really learning a lot around how to implement robotics, how to get the best out of them. They've gone through that sort of early stage of furtive implementation. So now there's a lot of learnings there that other brands, I'm sure, are going to jump on. So, and let's not, from a human resourcing, one of the I think it was Michael from White Castle said, implementation of these things was all very much around the ecosystem that they go into. So talking people through, it's not about replacing humans. It's actually about empowering somebody to drive. That person on the cooker has now been upskilled to be a technician on the thing that cooks the chips. So it's fascinating stuff. But that's kind of so Trish, to answer you in a long term way, that's kind of where I'm seeing the trend.
Yeah, it's great. It's really cool. And then Luke, as you talk about a confluence of forces, right? You talked about the customer demand, right? The employee challenges. And really the channels, right? What we frequently talk about is the actual channel now is drive-through. So there's so many implications, right, with these trends. And I just kind of wanted to get your view on, the implications on these trends, from a restaurant perspective, like the challenges they face to manage this confluence of forces, and just some of your thinking on that as it relates to technology, yeah?
So there's so much more risk involved in implement, because you've got to implement so much more technology. So there is no one silver bullet that's going to turn this automation and digitization across the board. I know there are some players out there trying to do it, but actually it's going to be a long time, if any, that they're going to get it right. So best of breed is always still, I believe, the best way to do it. But instead of having 15 vendors, look at vendors that are taking a corner of the technology stack and doing it really, really well. Now, one of the things that came out, one of the things that the Restaurant Technology Network are doing is trying to standardize the integration endpoints. So so that it's much easier for technology providers to come in and integrate and into existing technologies within a restaurant stack. Now that's really important, and this is what happened back in the late 80s with the healthcare industry when they created HL7, and they basically created a standard which everyone adheres to and has to if you're not in it, then you're not part of tenders, for instance. So it influences buying behaviour as well. So the thing that I think that's going to be the biggest issue, and I think the way to circumvent or to deal to that from a restaurant perspective is bring specialists in that have gone through this in a different industry, and I think we're seeing more and more of that. So from corporate and from larger franchisees, but these guys are, some of the old hat there, they just didn't have the skill set and capability to understand the future of the technology that was required, and I think they've been found out and replaced by people that do. And so you're looking at very different structures to technology, IT teams, bigger IT teams, smarter, more digital. So I think that's great to see. You've still got your old timers in there, which have all of the knowledge. You can't get rid of them, and they are just augmented around these younger minds, which is it's very cool to see. So I think these brands have woken up and they're doing the right thing.
Yeah, absolutely, Luke. And it clearly is technology, right? Is such a huge part of the quick service industry's growth, and the importance of digital. And what we're seeing is actually companies citing digital sales are actually, from a food perspective, are at 50%. So it is constantly changing, which will require companies to be forever keeping up with the demands from the industry. But I kind of want to turn it to drive-through for a second. And I was doing a little homework drive-through topic because it's one of my favorite topics. And if you look at the introduction of drive-through, it was actually back in 1948 when it was first introduced. And it was a very simple model, right? It was a straight-through lane. There was a speaker system. And now, fast forward, right, 2020, 21, 22, 23, it really is a complex, probably from an evolution perspective, it is the most complex channel within the restaurant, given the fact that companies now have to figure out how to put cars in their stores. That's the analogy I use. So I kind of wanted to get your perspective on that, and just to kind of get your point of view on it. And then I kind of want to move into specifically how we're helping the industry. But your point of view on drive-through to me is so important.
Yeah. So there's a lot of, I think it's getting to the point where you're going to do your drive-through, just throw all the technology at it and make it a holistic solution. So I know some of the earlier adopters adopted digital signage, but really they didn't leverage digital signage for many years post that. It was pretty much just a digital poster. So you had some efficiency there, but they weren't really driving ticket. Then the onset of improved loop timers into sort of gamification and those sort of things, but really didn't turn the dial on performance. So I think there was so much unlocked data in the drive-through, but you've got to know where to put that data, how to leverage it to actually get to improve customer experience. And I kind of go back to, at the end of the day, you can automate everything you like in the drive-through, but you've still got one key bottleneck, and that's your staff. So how do you empower them with data that they understand to give them as much time to possibly prepare to help that go through, to push that through? Give them also, people talk about, throughput, but actually right now it's, are you utilizing every square inch of your drive-through? So if you took I sort of tried to explain this to some of our IQ customers, and I say, well, if you had a drone sitting above your drive-through for 12 hours, how much of that concrete do you reckon that drone's going to be able to see? Which is are you utilizing and optimizing the capacity of your drive-through as best as possible? And with loop timing, you just can't. You don't have enough visibility. So that's kind of why we developed IQ, is to give you as much visibility from the full customer journey from when they come in to when they leave. Now, that was a nice little plug on my technology, but it's actually the truth. So if it's the only way you can actually understand and improve the capacity of your drive-through in real time is having full visibility. But the thing is that having a full understanding of customer journey also gives you better understanding that can feed into loyalty. It can also influence menu boards. So it can actually tell you when to reduce your longest lead time items. It can also tell you when to upsell, cross-sell, because there's not many people in the drive-through. So a lot of this other, I always say you've got to know your velocity and capacity of your drive-through before you can adopt a lot of this other technology. Like even some of the problems with AOT right now, they don't know where the customer is to be able to turn the AOT on. You need cameras. So, my advice would be, in terms of starting to rethink this, is understand really what's going on in your drive-through first and foremost before you adopt that next layer and that next layer of technology. But it's in some cases they've gone around the wrong way, which is fine. That's no problem. But I honestly believe the drive-through, you can have significant impact on your throughput and your customer experience if you can empower your staff with the right amount of data and influence behavior based on real-time data. That's my point of view.
Yeah, and I think it's great, Luke. And just kind of, for those who are joining us today, we have some of our customers on who know our products, but, we've folks on the phone with us today that don't know our products. Could you just touch on, I'm actually fascinated by the IQ product and how it helps the quick service restaurant industry in this channel, right, in this drive-through. Just kind of some of the specifics, like if you don't really know the product, how is it helping the actual restaurant, specifically? So,
so I think
just touch on it.
Yeah. So the old loop timers, and I know some of the loop timing companies are trying to throw cameras at each end and give a bit more visibility. But actually, you need to track the car from end to end to understand bottlenecks. So the bottlenecks aren't necessarily where you order and pay or cashier. Quite often, it's actually the pieces in between which are getting stuck, because and you don't call them bottlenecks. You actually call them disused pieces of real estate. So these gaps. You're seeing a flood of companies coming out with order handhelds, which is a good move. We can see that some of our customers use them and it works. But I think the key here is you need to understand ingress, you need to understand lost revenue, so how many cars are driving off. You can do something about that. If you see 3 cars drive off in 10 minutes, you're going to send someone out there. We can send someone out there who can tell you to do that. Even just giving you what your pre-stack to your order pointers, that's information that's never, that hasn't been available up until recently. So the other opportunity is parking cars. So one of our customers, they had a tolerance of about 8% parking cars, right? So they were like, we don't park any more cars than that. And when we put the system in and tracked all the way to the waiting bays and parking bays, we recognized that some of them were parking their cars 35% of the time. That's 35%. So that stopped pretty quickly. So that's really bad customer experience and bad for accuracy as well. So you get back to that, it's like what we're doing is, in essence, we're actually changing culture. And when you change culture, you can bring it back and you can rebuild on that. And that's where the next phase of IQ is going. So turning that data into something that's going to keep them honest, but at the same time is going to start to build them up and extend human potential. So that's where we're going with it.
Yeah, it's fascinating, Luke. The panoramic view that you have with the IQ product and the value for the industry by being able to optimize throughput, really understand their day parts, right? And what's really going on in my store, because the drive-through is essentially the store, as well as kind of improving that order accuracy and overall performance, right? That's what I hear
Absolutely.
you say. I actually think being able to understand attrition is really important for these players, right? And get their heads around, well, what are my alternative options to serve those customers? The other piece, I want to touch on data, Luke.
Sure. That's what I was going to talk about.
Yeah, but now if you think about the channel being the drive-through, the data from that drive-through is such a critical piece. It's a gem in the overall holistic picture of data that creates insights for the brands. And I just wanted to touch on what do you think the art of the possible is by combining these data sets with the other data sets in the store? Would love your view on that.
So it goes back to, it depends on what your output really is. What are you trying to achieve? So if you're trying to understand staff behavior, you can, and performance, then you can track that with point of sale data to understand who's driven the most revenue through that, and, you know, versus the velocity and car counts. So you can start to see performance around staff. All right, so you can hone in on them. Secondly, if you want to be able to influence ticket at the right times, not just influencing ticket at a day part, but actually when it genuinely is busy or not so busy, then this is where the data can be leveraged. In another case, we talked about, you know, driving human decision making or staff decision making around what do you do when you start to lose customers off the tail end. But then if you then drive this into, I think the area that I want to, that we're exploring as a company right now is a thing called, you know, staff loyalty and rewards. So if we know how well these staff members are performing and the team that they work with operate around, you know, what could you do? Like, we now know that if we give them accurate data in the drive-through and a much broader data set that they can operate to, there is organic improvement. Like, we're seeing double-digit organic improvement without even doing anything more than just putting it in the store. So that's awesome. But how do we identify? How do we build on that? And how do we recognize the staff member for doing something really, really well? How do we recognize the staff member and the staff team for absolutely crushing it on a shift? How do we reward that? You know, and there's always, you know, leaderboards and those sort of things, and it's like, you know, it works, but you know, who's getting the benefit of that? Probably the store owner, who gets a bonus, right? How do we get that down to granular level where these staff members are absolutely rewarded for the things they're doing? But there's also an opportunity for subliminal training as well. All right, so how do you train them when there's, you know, all the IP has disappeared into insurance sales over COVID? You know, you've got this gap. So, you know, we know about staff retention, we know about the cost of retraining. So what if you could reward, train all of these things in the same platform, and creating a community around that? What does that sound like, Trish? You're from the background of loyalty.
Yes, yeah. It's fascinating, Luke, and I know we attended the Restaurant Technology Conference last week, and that conference was kicked off with a doctor, Dr. G, that spoke about the importance of employees. And I think this really ties into everything that's going on in, you know, I'm sitting here in the US right now, but if you look at the confluence of forces and the stress that's in the system in the quick service restaurant industry, and the importance of retaining employees who are actually serving your customer. And if you shift your focus to enhancing employee, of course, consumer experience is paramount, you know, speed, service, accuracy, but the people who are serving are the employees. And there's a huge untapped opportunity, and I'm not just talking about HR benefits, I'm talking about tangible benefits down to a store, down to employee level, leveraging the data and the insight from the Fingermark products to provide the trends, the statistics, but then reward at a store level reward at an individual level is a real untapped opportunity. And I'm delighted to be working on this with Finger Markets. As you know, it's, my favorite area.
It fascinates me how many loyalty programs there are focused on the customer. We're absolutely, I agree, the customer has got to be number one, right? But if you don't focus on your staff to actually perform the best they possibly can for that customer when they are there, it goes out the window. Like you either give them as many free coffees as you like, you'll lose them as a customer. So it's all there and now. That's the key. So there's a big gap there, and I think what I've seen is QSR industry needs to take a step back and look what's just happened with their labour and staff and go, how do we stop this from happening again? So anyway, there's a lot of things you can do there, but I think that's really is labour is so precious. Flippy and Chippy, the robots, are only going to do so much. I can assure you that. So is kiosks, right? But you still need to have that human factor there, man. It's so important. You've got to find a way to look after the staff.
It's great. It's great, Luke. And I kind of want to come back to that topic of omni-digital. When we look at some of the stats, and I was reading some of the stats, Taco Bell, Chick-fil-A, all the big brands, right? Majority of, half of their sales now being driven through digital. And the importance of having an omni-digital, but I think the layer of focus on the employees is what's really needed. But if you're the CTO, Luke, of one of these companies, and 2023 is upon you, right? And 2024, 25, what would be your advice to some of these CTOs in terms of areas of focus and spend of your investment dollars?
Yeah.
Just curious.
I'd say first and foremost, build a team that's future focused. Bring in teams which are AI, ML focused. They understand the technologies, they understand the output of employing good technology. I would then say focus on your areas, your bottlenecks. Focus on bottlenecks first. So bottlenecks that generate your biggest amount of revenue. All right. So whether it's aggregated delivery, get in a smart sequencing system that helps the kitchen. Employ that. Drive through. Understand your drive through first. All right. And that's not just a clipboard and a timer. That's not loop timers. This is understanding what goes on end to end in that drive through across all of your stores, and then you build out your drive through strategy and implementation of digital from there. Like we talk about AOT. I see AOT as a big future, but do I see it ready now? I don't. I genuinely don't. It's like all AL ML models. They've got to be trained, right? They've got to have more and more training. They'll get there. It'll get there, but it needs wider deployments, which is happening now. But it's going to take 2 or 3 years to get there. So, but you've got to start somewhere. So I think being brave from a CTO, you've got to be brave. You've got to have a budget to be able to throw some money at certain things, trial, test, learn, fail fast, all of that. And you've got to have a team and vendor relationships. And that's the important thing. Vendor relationships are absolutely paramount. You've got to choose the right vendor that fits your culture, that fits the way you work, and give them some level of autonomy to just go out there and do their stuff,
So it's culture, mindset, investment, really doubling down on signposts for the future, right? And,
Yep.
Talking about the future, 5 years from now, what do you see? I know we're very focused on, you have the technology solutions for the stores. You have the kiosks, you have the menu boards, you have the drive-through. What does 5 years look like from now in this business?
So I see huge amounts of store design change. Do I see I see different channels being thought about in terms of store design. I see automation. And robotics as being pretty stock standard for those mundane jobs. All right. I see a lot of upskilling in staff. I see kiosks everywhere. In 5 years' time, they might be ending their existence. I still don't believe. Every 5 years, I think they're going to get tanked, and they don't. They just keep coming back stronger. It's those like cockroaches. But the thing with them is with all of this technology, it's going to take 5 years to get the implementation, the cross correlation of data, bedded in and right. So this is just a phased approach. But talking about data, I think the big play in 5 years' time, I think the restaurants will understand the value and power of that data and how to use it. So I think we're just the tip of the iceberg of restaurant data capability, and I think it's pretty exciting. So I think you're going to see more companies coming into this space going, hey, let us understand it, let us do a lot of that data crunching for you, let's see the insights. And I think that's going to be the really exciting piece, because that's where you're going to get the changes in operations and store design and menu management that'll flow through to making a much better staff experience, much better customer experience.
Luke, talk to me about your point of view on payments as it relates to customer experience.
Yep.
Would love your point of view where you see that headed. So
payments are a necessity. I think there's been some pretty cool evolution in the payment space and the fintech space in the last 5 to 10 years. Am I seeing anyone grab hold of the opportunity in QSR? I actually do in even more regulated places like Asia, where they've just got QR codes everywhere. Like you don't have them on kiosks, you have them in drive-through. It's smart. It's a good way of going. Like if you can crack that nut, I think you're away. Because I honestly believe cards, people with cards are going to disappear. So it's going to be phone payments all the way. So gearing up for that and having players which are well funded that can connect all the dots and do the integrations to the switches, all of that sort of stuff is really important. Are we there yet? Not yet, but it's coming. I think I'd give it 2 years, and I think we're going to have some really cool options in payments.
So the combination of facial recognition with voice recognition, seamless payments for the consumer, that will be our future. No, this is really this is phenomenal, Luke. I really appreciate your time, and I think I hope the audience certainly have heard our point of view and understand what Fingermark does, the problems we're solving in this industry, and the journey we're heading right with the evolution of our products and new products, more to follow. Just for the audience, there is a way for you to kind of put questions in. We do have a question, Luke. And I think it's from Dan, and I'm gonna call the question out. Do we have the human line tracking too? I think that's a frequent question that we get answered, like to see how long customers are waiting in a line to order. We welcome other questions because we have a short minute.
So at this current time, we don't, for a number of reasons. We just haven't really got to it. We don't see restaurants. I think prior to COVID, we were really focused on this, but post-COVID, we sort of parked it through, further development of our drive-through technology. I've got a really cool theory about how we do it, because there's a lot of data there and it's a lot of tracking people. But so it's something that we do have on the roadmap for next year to spin up. We've got a couple of really interested customers actually that have got some good theories about what they want to track too. I think that's half the key with it. It's like you can track so many different things, but I think it's got to be circumstantial to your restaurant. What's the output? What are you trying to achieve? So the short answer is no, but give us a call in 6 months, and I'm pretty sure we'll be close to it or in development.
We have another question. if there was one technology you could recommend for a QSR right now, what do you see as the priority?
Kiosks.
Okay.
I wouldn't have said that 2 years ago, but kiosks, they just an absolute ROI. It improves accuracy. It improves accuracy, throughput, ticket. They are cost effective. They, remove your staff into more productive areas. They are what the customer wants and is used to. And then you get rid of 5 or 6 point of sale terminals on your front counter. A lot of people say to us, "Oh, we don't have room for them." I'd say, well, just rip out your point of sale terminals and we'll put 3 on your counter, and then your staff can go off and start making chicken or whatever. That's kind of as simple as it is. So we're seeing a lot of retrofits like that, which is awesome. So it's starting to work. Yeah. I'd say do that, because those kiosks, they'll pay for all your technology that you need to roll into for the next 12 months. Trust me.
And it's really interesting, Luke. We're seeing a lot of great results with the use of the kiosk from an ROI perspective and a cross-sell perspective, and just ease and convenience for the consumer, right? And I know we're in a lot of discussions with a lot of other amazing companies who are very interested in us partnering, because we have the combined hardware and software, and there's a lot of interest in us removing friction in other areas. But spot on the kiosk. We do have another question around, where do we go to see your IQ products? So that is a great question. We do have our Fingermark website, but what we will do, as a follow-on for those of you who are interested and have joined, we do have your emails, and we will follow up very specifically with you on the IQ products. So, Cece, I will take that as a takeaway. Another question just came in. I know we have a few more minutes. This is from Tal. A very open question, but can you share a word on loyalty program as part of the digital strategy? Well, certainly. I think I'm delighted to take that question. And one of the things I will say about loyalty, especially in the US space and globally, is I have a word which I call saturation of loyalty. And on any given day, consumers are carrying around 14 loyalty programs in their wallet. So, and their physical wallet. So you can, think about all these plastic cards. I think what's really important from a loyalty perspective is you have to look at who the customer is, and you have to layer in meaningful rewards, offers, and benefits to that consumer based on what they're purchasing, when they're purchasing, and rewards need to be tied to in the moment. So as an example, if you're in the drive-through and you're leaving, a simple tactic is thank you for your business, right? A simple SMS reminder that, your next cup of coffee is free. So really laying out what I call the quantitative elements of a loyalty program, which is the rewards and the offers, but layering in that to a digital engagement customer strategy in the channels they're engaging with you is really the secret sauce, right? Getting the quantitative elements of those rewards accurate, and then executing flawlessly digitally to the consumer. And really importantly on this topic is the guest profile needs to have all the data points that we spoke about. It's not just their email. It has to have their car type, their purchasing, their frequency. All of that needs to be populated into a guest profile, and then the execution is against that. And lastly, I will say one of the most important things for the quick service restaurant industry is to really start focusing on that employee rewards. So that's my point of view on the loyalty piece. Oh, we have one more question, Luke. I know we have 5 more minutes. With staffing being an issue, how do you think technology can help improve staff engagement and stop the high levels of churn?
So I think it goes back to it's identifying identifying brilliant behavior, identifying, which they do, like, don't get me wrong, like there is, but I think it's building a community, right? So a building community they log into, they're part of, they can see themselves rewarded, they can see themselves identified as high achievers. But there's also that, as I talk about, the subliminal training. Like, I think everyone wants to get better, right? Everyone wants that ability to improve, and then be able to see that improvement through a platform where they're put up against with their peers from not only just, may not even be their own restaurant chain. It could be another chain. So, you know, I think subliminal training, or training in general, is a really big part of that. And it's expensive to train, and it doesn't necessarily, you can, you know, I'm a perfect example of this. You know, I'm pretty dyslexic, so I need to learn in the moment. So I need to be told, yes, that's a good thing to do, and it's messaging. So helping with decision-making process in real time I think is the key. It's also a really comforting way to actually help drive performance too, because you're pushing them along. But they'll learn that, and then suddenly that'll become second nature to them, those decisions. So I think there has to be a balance between, you know, physical training and then that as well. So that's my point of view anyway. It's you know.
Yeah, that's great, Luke.
And I think
one more question. We have 3 minutes before you go off to a critical client meeting. One more question that came in was, where do you, for you, Luke, specifically, you know, how do you see the future of dashboards in the stores and the use of race tracks? And, you know, this is a system that's used by QSR. And that's the last question.
So I think dashboards are a phenomenal piece of digital real estate. There's a lot of them around restaurants, and you know, there's screens everywhere. But I think the best use of them is giving them instances to message on. So telling them what's going on, what they need to do, how to improve, what's coming up in the restaurant, encouragement. So that's how I would use dashboards. I think, you know, others like the numbers. They like driving the numbers and the KPIs to beat how far off. So that works too. Like, we definitely see that work as well. But I like the broader messaging piece. I think that's the way to use it. And, you know, some restaurants we're in, we've got 6 dashboards around the place, and man, the staff live and breathe by it. But my question to that is, they're always focused on those dashboards and those KPIs. You know, should they be focused on serving the customer, or should they be packing the food correctly? So these are, you know, everyone that we work with are phenomenal at their job, mind you. So they can multitask, unlike me.
Yeah. There's one last question which I do want to address. Do we believe giving too much data or information can be a negative thing? I think the answer to that question is, it needs to be the right data, it needs to be accurate data, and it needs to create insights that can inform action for that store in real time, is really the answer to that question.
Bang on, Trish, yeah. Goes back to turning that huge data set into a simple message, the right message to the right person at the right time, and simplifying it, making it, you know, a 15-year-old can understand.
Absolutely, or a 5-year-old. Well, Luke, I wanted to say a huge thank you for your time. I know you're.
Thank you, Trisha. That was awesome.
It was my pleasure, and to everyone who joined, and to everybody who's actually going to see it. You know, we are delighted to be serving the industry, and we look forward to partnering with you based on your needs. So thank you, everybody.
Yeah, over to you, Peggy.
Yes, thank you
so
all
much for listening, guys.
Yeah. Thank you all for attending today. Thank you to Luke and Trisha and Fingermark for making this program possible. A recording of the webinar will be available shortly, and you'll receive an email letting you know when it is available. Thank you all again, and have a great day.